today we're going to be doing some fall cleanup in the garden. We're still a couple weeks out from our first frost date, but I've kind of given up on some things and I want to start going through the cleanup process to tame some of the craziness that's in our gardens right now. So let's do it. So this is our kitchen garden right now. Clearly it's gotten way out of hand. We have a tomato in here that was trellised up the side of the house, and we had a couple weeks of really intense rain and that tomato fell and we never got around to fixing it. Clearly it has been loving its life. It's growing like crazy, but everything else around it is not really loving it. It's kind of choking everything out and it's a big problem. So we could prune this and trellis it again, but it's not really worth it at this point in the year. I find that once it gets below 60 degrees, the flavor on our tomatoes starts to get weird anyway. So we're just gonna rip this whole thing out and try again next year. All right, that is this bed finished. It's crazy how much space that tomato was taking up. It really was taking over everything. So there's way more space in here now. Some things look a little bit sad because they were getting choked out, but that's all right. We've cleared it out now and it looks really nice for fall now. The next little spot that we are gonna tackle is this little space next to our entryway. This is a spot that I definitely want to rework next year if we get to it. It's kind of an awkward little strip of dirt. There are some stones, some like decorative stones in here, but they don't really do very well at suppressing weeds anyway. So I'm thinking of reworking this next year and intentionally planting something in here, something low maintenance, but something that will look a lot nicer because this space gets so weedy and doesn't look good really regularly, and it's really hard to maintain and stay on top of all those weeds. We actually did plant something intentionally in this section of our entry. We planted some lemon balm, which we had lemon balm at my childhood home growing up, and I remember it being prolific, but I don't remember it being so aggressive. So we are going to rip this out because it's not native and it's really showing invasive tendencies on our property. I don't know if this is a officially invasive plant, but it was spreading not only in the bed that it was in, but it was cropping up in every other garden on our property and spreading like crazy. So we are going to rip it out and put something else in there. So if you have any native replacements that are similar to lemon balm, let me know because I love the smell. I love making tea out of it, but it's just not worth it to be planting something that is invasive or aggressive and not native on our property. Next up, I'm moving on to our hydrangea bed. I feel like I just showed cleaning this out along with the kitchen garden bed, and they're already a disaster again, but oh well. Sometimes I feel embarrassed that I'm always catching up or our gardens look really messy, but you know what? That's just gardens. That's just life. So if you also feel like that, hi, hello, welcome. We don't shame messiness here, clearly, so you're not alone. And I hope this is relatable to you and is motivating for you. I am taking a quick break from all the weeding and garden cleanup to harvest some of my flowers that are ready for drying. In this bed, I've got quite a few straw flower plants, and I noticed that a lot of them are at peak stage for harvesting for drying. So I'm cutting all of those, I'm stripping the stems and prepping them to hang and dry. We also have a ton of dahlias this year. These are the best dahlias I've ever grown. I'm super happy with them. They're so beautiful. All right, friends, it's another day, and today we're going to tackle the veggie garden. Clearly, everything is looking pretty sad right now in the garden. We still have some stuff that's blooming, but on the whole, most things are kind of winding down for the season, and there's a lot of things that need to be cleaned up and come out of this space. I'm starting under the hoops for our low tunnel. This is where we plant garlic because we have pest issues with garlic, and the solution that we found works the best is to grow it under insect netting in a low tunnel. And garlic is planted in the fall, so I really want to get this space cleaned out first because this is where we're going to be planting in the fall, and we want to have space ready for that. I am doing some minimal cleanup on the dahlias, but I'm largely leaving these because I want those tubers to get the most amount of energy from the plant before I cut those back and dig up those tubers. Here's a quick update on our asparagus plants. They look really messy because it's fall, but they're doing so well. It's their second year since we planted them. We planted 1 year crowns, so they're technically 3 years old. Some of these are looking so great, and I'm so excited to see these in the spring and harvest from these. I'm going to work on the tomatoes next. We do still have ripe tomatoes on these plants, but the plants are looking really rough and the flavor and texture of these isn't great. It's been too cold. In my experience, once the temperatures get into the 50s, the texture and flavor of tomatoes tends to just get a little bit weird. So even though we do have ripe fruit on here, I am going to be ripping these plants out and composting them. They're clearly past their prime, they're not thriving, and the fruit that we get off there anyway isn't going to taste very good. So it's one less thing that looks messy, one less thing to do if we just take care of these now. On to more cleanup. I am doing a little bit of weeding, and we also have a rogue gourd plant, squash plant or gourd plant in here. I didn't plant it. I don't know where it came from. It kind of has just gone wherever it wants to, which is fine, but now it's in the way, so I'm ripping that out and harvesting any of the ripe gourds that are on there. Here is our harvest from that plant. Not bad for something I didn't even plant. I only picked the ones that were ripe and ready to go. The skins on pumpkins and gourds and squash have to be tough enough to harvest. I like to test this with my fingernail. If I press my fingernail in and it breaks the skin, they're not ripe enough to harvest. They will rot instead of storing. Our last garden maintenance task for the day is going to be sifting our compost. We use a 3-bin compost system. We typically have one that's active that we're still adding to, one that is kind of steeping and doing its thing, and then a final one that we use for brown waste or for storing sifted compost. This compost that we have is done, but it's still kind of chunky. So in order to be able to use this compost now, we are going to sift out the woody bits, and that gives us a really fine, nice, easy to work with compost that we can put in our gardens, and that makes it really easy to sow seeds in there without big chunky branches and pieces of wood in there. We use this little DIY tool that Greg made, just pieces of wood and some hardware cloth, and we sift our compost that way. It is a little bit work intensive, but it works for us, and it's not a task that we have to do very often. That's it. Now we have all this beautiful compost, this beautiful dirt that we can amend our garden beds with. We can sow seeds in it. And the best part is that less than a year ago, this was garbage. And now it's something that's useful, that we can use in our gardens and we can put back into the earth.